In case I don't know you guys, I'm Venessa, and I run the blog We the Classy. And
I'm Connie, and I run the blog The Files. And we've been following each other for a while, haven't we?
a long time.
Yeah, quite a while. And I think I've been in your DMs quite a few times as well.
Yeah, we've been chatting for a long time. I remember when we had discussions about feminism and just I think that
Day as well, I think, and some stuff that you post about your kids, because I think we both have a girl and a boy.
yes,
right?
Yep. I have my daughter's 8 and my son is 7. How about you?
Yeah, my daughter's 10 and my son's 4.
So, okay. Yeah. So we have a lot in common, but we're in different countries. Yeah. Right? I'm in the US.
Yeah, and I'm in London, so it's quite nice to kind of see your lifestyle and how you curate your content. And I love your style videos with your daughter as well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Those are fun to do.
Yeah, but we've never had a conversation as in like over the phone or over like virtually, just usually just messaging, right?
Right. Which is amazing how social media brings us together. And so with everything going on with Black Lives Matter and the movements we've been seeing, I think, being two people in very similar places in our lives, but also maybe experiencing things very differently because of our country and our skin color and such. I'm so happy you reached out to me and said, like, let's have a discussion about like allyship and what's going on.
Most definitely, because I think most importantly, I think when I saw Blackout Tuesday, and I remember talking to one of my non-black friends, she's white actually, and she's also from the same country as me in terms of where my family have grown up, but we were having a discussion about how it's so interesting to see who kind of posts black squares, who kind of takes a moment to kind of pause, and who doesn't, and it's kind of like rooting out who really is a bit more conscious and who kind of doesn't have it even in their perspective. So when you posted quite a few things on your Instagram, I was like, okay, I really liked the content that you're posting, especially when it came to allyship and how to be better and how to kind of engage in conversation with people. And I think the one thing that I've picked up the most, and most people are picking up now, it's that you don't really need to have conversations with your black friends, even though that's important. I think what's important as an ally is to have those conversations with other white people, whereas you are not racist. It's the other people that you may come across that you see picking up certain things. So some of the stuff you posted resonated with me. I just wanted to kind of hit it off with that, really, like with everything that's gone on, what's been the one thing that really stood out to you? Was it the video? Was it how malicious and horrendous it was? I know even prior to that, you've always been quite conscious in posting stuff. Like I mentioned, you posted something on Martin Luther King Day and how you teach your children to kind of be fair and be equal. But did that kind of amplify it when all the George Floyd stuff happened?
Right. So like you said, it's always been super important to me. And I had some time to think about because it always has triggered me since I was young. But I've had time to really think about where is that rooted. I like to know myself really well so that I can stand up and be comfortable with how I'm standing. And I thought it does not compare, but I think my emotional attachment to equality based on skin color and how people look starts from a very young age of when I was bullied for how I looked. And I think, like I said, it's not comparable because it's not systemic, right? But it was the experience of, having my home vandalized and, being bullied extremely for how I looked. It implanted something in my heart where I was like, nobody should be treated differently because of how they look. And that's where it kind of molded me, I think, from a really young age, and made it almost like an emotional trigger where I feel like it's my job to teach my kids that compassion. So that's why I think it started from a young age and it evolved into me just being super aware of experiences that might not be my own and how to lead with love, lead with, you know, love versus leading with this like fear of differences.
Yeah.
So with everything that came about, my voice about it became louder.
Yeah.
Yes, it was, I mean, beyond upsetting. And it also brought to light a lot of things that I wasn't totally aware of. While I was very educated, learning ways to amplify other voices and also speak about it and also do the work, ways to do those things became more obvious and clear to me. Well, it wasn't as much as before it was showing what is right and talking to my kids about what is right and making sure we are leading with our, by example. So I don't know if that makes sense, but this movement gave me ways to be a stronger ally.
Yeah, it does. No, that definitely makes sense. And in terms of like experiences, you said like, with people kind of treating you differently when you were younger, but have you ever been in kind of situations? I mean, I can only speak for myself in terms of what I've experienced, but
Right.
in terms of you as an ally or just noticing things where you've kind of thought, okay, that's wrong. I feel a bit iffy about it, but I don't know how to approach it. And then also, secondly, have you ever felt like knowing something's uncomfortable and knowing something's wrong, having a non-white friend and then just being like, okay, I want to ask if that offended you, but I feel uncomfortable asking you, is it okay? Like, have you ever been in a situation like that, or how do you
Um,
approach?
yeah. So, I mean, I have never been in a situation where I fully had to stand and say, stop, which I would. I would put myself in front of someone in a heartbeat, knowing that just my skin color has caused, for years, there's this bias that's been built into our society and our systems that allow me to stand up and stand in front of someone and say, stop, that's completely not okay. I have never done that, but I have been in situations where unfortunately, I've had to say to another white person, that's not okay to say.
Yeah.
I mean, at a table with other white people, but I've completely stood up and said, no, that's incorrect. That's not okay to say, and you're just perpetuating negative impressions that aren't true. So I've been in those situations. Like that's what the most I've been confronted with in that sense. I know a lot more just through my friends who are people of color who have had experiences, sharing their stories with me and the worries they have for their kids, and experiences with things people are posting on social media. And it's gotten so amplified, so much worse right now. So my heart kind of breaks a little bit for some of my friends who are dealing with negativity. Yeah.
And in terms of like with social media and so much things coming to light, I guess, has there been anything? I know I've learned quite a lot of things in the past couple of days that I didn't really know about either. But has there been anything that stood out to you that you've been like, oh, I really, really didn't know that. I will most likely pay attention, or I'll do that differently from now on.
Yes. So, I mean, one is this, so the use of African American.
Yeah.
So we were from a young age, and I was conditioned to use African American. And I was watching this video on it, and it's like, I was told that's the respectful thing to say, but not every person of color is American and African. And that's totally insensitive in a way to assume that, but it's the conditioning to use those words. So, I mean, it's amazing that I was thinking I was being politically correct and respectful when in reality I was being completely blind and disrespectful in a way to assume people are automatically African American? What if they're Spanish American? And then also, to take it a level further, why is someone who's just white without an accent assumed to be American, but anything else is not assumed to be American? Like, aren't we all just
it's like
American?
other, so it's like white is the default and everything else is other.
Exactly. Why am I the default? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why am I American? But then we have to specify what kind of American that other person is.
Yeah,
I thought that.
I was going to say, in England, it's quite different just because we don't have the term African American, obviously. So we do say black, and we do just put down black on everything just to kind of identify ourselves. But one thing that was brought up to light, I think, even quite a few years ago, I think Benedict Cumberbatch got quite in trouble for it, is the use of the word coloured, and that's quite not right, you know, that's not PC. And I remember even in school with myself, you know, we'd talk about things, and obviously this is like 10-15 years ago, and people would just categorize anything non-white as coloured, and I'd have to be like, okay, I think I was 14 or something, and I was just like, you can't call me coloured because me and an Asian person aren't the same. We don't have the same characteristics. Like, she's Asian, I'm black. And I think that argument got brought to light a lot of times, and now it's just black and it's Asian. But the other term in England now that we're having quite a bit of a fuss with, really, is BAME, so black and ethnic minorities. And
What
black people, so black people really don't like that.
What is
So
the word?
it's called BAME, so BAME, so black and minorities, like other minorities, and they just group it together. So other than calling them coloured, it's now changed to black and ethnic, and they put
it's
umbrella,
right?
Exactly, it's such a generalization, because as much as, you know, certain things, and obviously you're a different color and you're all minorities in a sense, you don't have the same experiences. You know, someone's Asian, someone's non-white, but they don't have the same experience as someone black, you know. So it's quite, I think race is so complex, and identity is so complex as well, in terms of, you know, there's nothing wrong with calling someone black because of course they're proud of it, but in doing so, having white as the default sometimes is also problematic.
Absolutely. So how do you feel about the term, like the POC, the people of color? Is that like colored for you?
I think it's the same. I think even
oh,
on Twitter,
okay.
So I've noticed that in the past 6 months, especially on the internet, this like BIPOC,
Okay.
and I think again that's more of an American thing, but I've noticed it more so just because I'm prevalent on social media and I, you know, read up on things, and I know a lot of people, especially Black Twitter, if you want to call them that, have just been like, what is this term? Like, it looks like biopic.
So it's like another kind of,
it's just another thing
trying to be like African American.
And it's
I'm sorry.
No worries. It's just another terminology to kind of just cast in terms of otherness, and just like white and biopic, white and BAME, white and that. So I think just call people black, call people Mexican, call people people are proud of their color. It's just a problem when, you know, people are treated differently because of it, and I think that's something that just has to be really talked about more. No one's going to have an argument with you because you call them black, but if you treat them differently because of that, then obviously that's where the problem lies.
Exactly. So it's the layered deepness. But thank you for educating me and explaining that to me. Because
most definitely.
Sometimes terms arise, and it's in articles I'm reading that are wonderful articles, and I'm not teaching me knowledge, but then, you know, until you apply it in real life, you don't realize maybe some things are offensive, and again, it's not about me. In a way, it's learn. I have to learn, and a lot of these
as long as you're
have been
open,
had.
I think as long as you're open to learning more, or just seeing what some people are comfortable with. There might be someone who's totally comfortable with being called African American, and you might meet someone else and they'll be like, I'm sorry, I'm just black, you know. So sometimes it's dependent, but I think asking people what they're comfortable with, or even when they do say to you like, oh, I'd rather be called this, not seeing it as a problem and just being like, oh, okay, I think at least that way you open that communication line. Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's an important conversation. I mean, this is such a good conversation, and just letting people be what they want to be versus
Yeah.
the group, the stereotype. Um,
Yeah, most definitely. And I
so
think a lot of people in England, mostly, I would say, from my experience, have, especially when the stuff in America happened and the George Floyd murder happened, and then we started having protests over here. And I know one of the big arguments was like, this has happened in America. Why are you protesting in London? And then it happened in Amsterdam, then it happened in thing. And I think the thing that people don't realize is collectively, I think Black experiences across the diaspora are the same in this way that it's systemic, in the way that they're treated, in the way that the experiences certain people have when they go to school, the certain
mhm.
experiences that people have when they go to work. I think they're so similar in what happens despite what country they're in. So when they see something, I think that's literally what sparked all those protests globally, and not just in America as well.
Yeah, I feel like there was so much that was just being accepted when it shouldn't have been. And maybe
Yeah.
it was like a bigger problem than um, anyone was really able to take on individually. And so unfortunately, catastrophe brought change. And that's normally how change
I think
works.
so.
It's,
Yeah.
it's brought on by catastrophe. So, um, yeah, it's systemic which is everywhere, right?
Yeah. And I
Um,
think people think racism is just, obvious, it's like,
it's
oh, if
not
I don't say the N word, I'm not racist, and if I have like one Black friend, I'm not racist. But I think that's not the main problem. The main problem is all the nuances and the little things and the stereotyping and the you must eat chicken and the thingies with the water, all of these little characteristics that people
mhm.
attribute to a certain race, and they're so ingrained that they don't even realize they're doing it. And I think even myself, in reading more, one thing that I realized when I was like, okay, looking through all of this content and seeing what people are posting, and I think within my career as well, I've experienced loads of microaggressions.
Mhm.
And you sit there and you're like, okay, it's not racist.
Saying there's microaggressions that take place that
Yeah, most definitely. I said, I think everyone thinks that obviously racism is so overt, but there's so many microaggressions. And what I've noticed, especially lately while looking through content online, is other people have had those experiences in the same way that I have, especially in the working world and their careers, having the same experience as someone, but them being promoted before you. Or just going into somewhere and you're more senior than someone as a Black person, but someone's listening to your assistant because they're white, or little things like that, because people automatically assume that you don't have that authority or you don't have that intelligence. Or another thing is like, oh, you're so articulate, and it's just like, okay, but why do you have to comment on that? Because people expect you not to be,
right,
because you're a certain color. So
that is
all
that
these little,
bias that is built
yeah,
into the system.
exactly. And they don't think it's harmful, they don't think anything of it. That's why they actually say it out loud. But these little things are what actually perpetuate that and keep it going.
Right. And I mean, so I've been having discussions, um, in order to battle the pushback of, oh, it's not there, I'm not racist, like you're saying on a general level. I've been saying, but talk to people about their specific experiences, right? Stop generalizing, stop saying like, well, I'm not and everyone's fine.
Yeah.
Stop looking at it like a general thing. Talk to individuals, because I guarantee they will have stories. And I can tell you, just on that subject, I have one friend who told me that when she has a company, and when she goes to set up events, people like at locations, people will talk to her white employee
Yeah.
thinking they're in charge before they talk to her. And it's like, and then from that, I've had another friend tell me that she uses her middle name on her resume so that her resume isn't judged or passed over for a job. And she's an
Yeah, most
incredible
definitely.
resume.
Yeah.
Uh, and then to take that a step further, when they meet her and they're surprised because, her middle name is very, I don't know what to call it, like very typical,
Yeah.
that they're more surprised when they meet her, just to go through all of that. And
Yeah.
then I had another friend tell me that she has to be careful of how she asserts herself, because she's automatically assumed to be like,
Have attitude or just a
right,
certain tone. Yeah.
right. And those are the things, those are the things that are so, the bias that's built into us, just through how everything is taught. And then leading back to school, one of the things that I watched a video with my kids, and one of the things that kind of resonated with them, it's interesting what they pick up at their age. And one of the things that resonated with them is that this statistic that if there's a Black teacher, then and a white child and a Black child who are gifted, they both have an equal chance of being put into the gifted program or recognized as gifted. If there is a white teacher and there is a Black and a white child, the Black child has a 50% less likely chance of being recognized as gifted. And that isn't necessarily, so like we can umbrella it under racism, but it's like a bias that is, without recognizing it, the problem will persist. And that's where we are. We have to say, okay, are we paying attention? And it's like the same thing then that carries into being bloggers. And that was something that was brought to my attention, is like, are the companies you're working with, are they diverse? Are they representing all women? Are they hiring all different types of bloggers? And then are they a good company behind it all? Because it's one thing with their marketing. It's one thing if they're great with their marketing, but are they employing women in sales and in stores and that are diverse as well? Or is everyone being represented here? So it's built into everything.
Yeah, it's built literally into unconscious bias in the way that you said, like, especially with schools. I know people that haven't progressed further because they've said, oh, my teacher told me I wouldn't amount to nothing, or they've told me I didn't go for this because I won't succeed at it. And I'm just like, your job as a teacher is to encourage children, you know, and it makes you so wary as a parent, especially for myself, really, a parent of a child, of a Black child, really. To kind of be like, okay, their teachers have to, you know, pay attention to them, you know, make sure that they push them to do things further, make sure that they're checking their homework, make sure that they're communicating with me, whereas someone else might not, you know, have that experience. You might not have that, or have that in
that is what privilege is, right?
Yeah,
and that's what, it's not saying that like I might not have issues with teachers or my kids with certain things, but I don't have to worry that because of my skin color that they might be assumed to be less gifted or passed over, or, you know, and that is what privilege is. And recognizing that and being aware and not using it as like, by not recognizing it, people are weaponizing it in a way, you know? So recognizing it is like the first step. And then walking the walk of making sure things are fair. Like as a blogger, just responding to companies and saying, how are you representing, you know, everyone?
And I think in terms of blogs as well, I feel like in the same way that other brands do it, a lot of brands and companies, when they reach out, they think, okay, we'll just have one, you know,
right,
and everyone else, we'll have one person of color, or we'll have one Black person, and that's enough. That shows that we're diverse enough, you know. And I don't think that they really get it. And then when other bloggers obviously don't sit there and kind of put that in to say, hold on, as a white person, you know, I would like more people of color, or have you heard of this blogger, or have you, and I think if more of that was encouraged, it might push the brands to actually open up and, you know, do more with the diversity, rather than just having a token person there. And I can't stress to feel what that person feels like if they go away on a trip and, you know, they go to a shoot and they're the only person there. I think as a Black person as well, that's the first thing that you notice when I go into a workplace or a project. I have to look around and I'm like, okay, I'm the only one in this room. When I go into a restaurant, sometimes it's like, okay, how many are sitting over there just in case anything happens? It's always things at the forefront of your mind. And I think, yeah, that's just something as maybe white people just don't think about at all. And I think that's part of your privilege. You never have to have color at the forefront of your mind, whether it's bringing up your children, whether it's going out to places. There's like a big case in London where, you know, people went clubs and they wouldn't let a lot of black people in. You know, if you're a group of like,
They won't?
Yeah, they won't let, because they just feel like it pulls down the ambience, the aura. Yeah, literally. Yeah, so there were people like boycotting clubs because they were just very
Good.
yeah, they were very discriminatory. They'd see a black, you know, you want to go out, you want to have, you know, your girls' night out, you have, you know, your friends that look like you. Obviously you have your black girlfriends, you have your white girlfriends. If you go in a group, they're not letting you into that club. And that was a really big thing. So these are just things at the forefront of our minds. You know, even in our daily interactions, we actually have to think about the color of our skin. You know, if I go here with my husband, he can't wear a hoodie because he'll be perceived this way, whereas I'm sure someone white wearing a hoodie would be absolutely fine. So it's just that privilege that you don't have to constantly think about race every single day, whereas we constantly have to, even if we don't want to. It's just there. It's just something that we think about all the time. Yeah.
And it shouldn't be. I mean, just like that is the perfect example. Not letting people into clubs because of skin color. Is this not even, I mean, how, I don't even feel like that's a comment that should happen in 2020. That's
I mean, of course they don't say
from
it's
segregation times.
They'll say it's something else, or they'll say, you know, you're wearing this, or we're really full. But you know for a fact when they let in exactly another group of 4 girls that are all white and they let them in, it's just like, okay, if you had space, we're 4 of us, you know what I mean? So it's all those little things that you have to be like, am I crazy, or is it because I'm black? Like, you're constantly asking yourself that question, and you're constantly aware of it as well.
And then to also just take it a step further, it's not just how bad that experience is, but it also then perpetuates the negative stereotype, because people are going places and there isn't proper representation of what society is, and they're having false, it just perpetuates incorrect, just a very unhealthy society.
Yeah, and to take that further a bit as well, if you have those experiences and then you react to them, it's like, oh well, we were right, you know. They are angry or they are aggressive. So it's just a cycle of stuff, which is probably why, like you said, in terms of your friend having to kind of tone it down and not overreact, you have to learn that from quite a young age, probably like a teenager, to just not overreact. And it's just like, you have to pacify yourself in certain situations to not play up to a stereotype, which is something that obviously white people obviously don't do. I've had white friends. I grew up in a predominantly white school, and their experiences are so different to mine. They were great friends. They'd always stick up for me. They'd always kind of be allies, and if they notice certain things, they'll definitely be like, stop, you know. And they've done it so many times before. But in saying that, there's so many experiences that they have that I have to be like, hold on, they did that to me because I'm black, you know. And they'll be like, oh crap, because it's just not in their mind, you know.
Right, not at all.
Yeah, because they're like, this is just Connie, what do you mean? I'm just like, no, this is just the black girl to some other people. So
yeah, so I think like going back to what you said, where people think, well, I'm not racist because I don't use the N-word, and I don't, you know, I have friends who are black, but it's so much, you just got to look at the next step, how it keeps perpetuating deeper into our system. It's not just that.
It's more those microaggressions and those stereotypes and those bias that are constantly used. And in saying that, in terms of next steps, I think it starts with education. And I think we talked a little bit about our kids, like how would you aim to kind of raise anti-racist kids, or kids that are just conscious of it or conscious of their privilege, and, you know, grow up to be more advocates and more allies, really, as they get older.
And definitely just aware of what a healthy society is, and good relationships are, and what the world should look like in a way. I started really young with my kids, and I have to say, one of our first experiences was we had a block party and the firemen came, and there was a black fireman, and my son was 2, I think.
Yeah.
And he made an observation. He said, that fireman's I think he said black or he's brown or something. He was just making a 2-year-old observation, but at the same time,
Yeah.
my husband was like, like, oh no, why, this is so awkward, right? And I just said, he didn't say anything negative. He was making an observation. When it's a child's observation, they shouldn't feel like shamed for making observations. There's nothing shameful about a different skin color, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So from a young age, we started that conversation. Well, his skin's a different color than your skin, but he's just like daddy, and so, and then it has evolved as they've gotten older. And I believe it was last year was my first opportunity on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. My daughter has blue eyes and blonde hair, and she's the only one in our family with blue eyes and blonde hair. She came downstairs in the morning, and I looked at her and I said, I think she went to turn on the water. I said, and she was like, what? I said, you can't use the water in our house today. And she was like, what? What? You're crazy. And I said, well, you have blue eyes, and you're the only one with blue eyes, and that just doesn't fit with us. And so I tried. I carried it out for a little while. She got very like quiet, and she sat at the table, and so we tried. And then we talked about it. Eventually, she realized what day it was, and she had already learned quite a bit about it. And she was like, okay, I know what's going on here. But that was like a good experiment for them to see. It's like, well, she has blue eyes, but so what, right? So I try to do those things with them. Now, with where we are now, I thought long and hard about it because I think it can be scary. And I've been listening to this book about how it's, as mothers, we tend to think we are just supposed to protect and keep them in a bubble and keep them safe in a bubble and protect, right? But that shouldn't be our goal as much as to teach them how to be themselves and be brave in who they are.
Yeah,
so,
give them the tools,
right. So I thought about it, and I showed them some things that might be a little scary, but not, I did my best to find the right material to show them that might be kind of scary in a way. But then I explained to them, I said, one, this has to happen because the world is not working right. And then I closed it though, so they understood that like you have to lead with love, and everything will be okay. This is a sign that hate has been leading for far too long. And so we have, just ongoing discussions, but I did have my daughter sit in on a podcast with me, or a live with me, with 3 friends who are Black, who were discussing ways they would like for their allies to show up and help them. And it really hit her a little bit. At the end, she's like, should I call my friend and see if she's doing okay? I said, well, if you want to call her, if you want to email her and ask her how she's doing, I think that's one of the ways that we can be good friends right now, is just, are you okay? And listen. And so there's that. And then I have been continuously sharing the conversations, awkward conversations with a Black man. I don't know if you've seen those videos.
I think I've seen like 1 or 2. I think he did one with like Matthew McConaughey.
So I'm trying to find things that they relate to that bring them into the conversation in a way so that it strikes a chord with them. And like I said, I watched a video about how systemic racism has started and has been going for years, but through laws within the United States. And they watched that with us. And like I said, that part about how teachers with the gifted program, it kept them like kind of, after the video was over, they were sitting there and they were like, and I said, I know, see, it's stuff you don't see. Um, so that's kind of how we've been evolving the conversation,
Yeah.
and
And I
saying,
think
yeah,
kids are so observant and they're so innocent in the way that you said that your child just kind of made an observation. They're so literal
mhm,
children that don't do things with malice, you know. And then when you have to start giving them these reality doses to kind of realize that the world isn't perfect, or
right,
people act in this way, or, you know, people are going to judge people based on this, we think it's silly, but this is just how the world is. How can you be part of that change? And then just encouraging them to have that critical thinking and those tools themselves to kind of recognize wrong or speak up when they kind of spot something being a bit off, or not even being able to speak up if they can't do it, being able to tell you so you can kind of address it, I think is the best way to go around it, because they are still learning. And in that as well, I think they always think adults are right in the way that they are. You know, it's like, oh, it's an adult, they know better, I'll just listen. And it's just like, if you give them those tools at home, when they do go out in the big world and they see an adult acting in the wrong way, they can be like, okay, you're an adult, but
mhm,
you're not right in what you're saying, or you're an adult and that's completely wrong, you know. And that's the best that you can do as a parent, really. You can't mollycoddle them forever, and you can't
right.
protect them forever, but you can let them know that it's okay to speak up, or it's okay to kind of recognize wrong. And adults really don't know everything. They get it wrong a
Oh,
lot of the time, you know. So yeah.
I had a conversation too. I'm so glad these conversations are happening too. Just
Yeah.
seeing other people's conversations, things coming up where I can address it with my daughter. One of them was um, when people say she's pretty for a Black girl, like that.
Mhm.
Someone was talking about how people say that. And
Yeah.
that's again a privilege for me, is I've never noticed it, right? That
Yeah.
people, but I had, it enabled me to have a conversation with my daughter about beauty, and
Mhm.
someone isn't pretty in spite of skin color, and pretty in
Yeah.
spite, they are beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
Just having that open conversation about what is beauty and how beauty comes in all different ways, and it's never in spite of anything else. So
Yeah.
um but yeah, so this has been a time of where I've grown, uh,
Yeah.
but I have a lot of growing to do, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to be. I can't imagine a world, or I can't imagine being a person who doesn't want to be better. I can't imagine just saying like, nope, this is how I am and that's it. It
Yeah.
seems like a really closed place to be.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people want to do better and learn, and I think it's starting with listening and to real stories. And
Yeah. And continuing those conversations,
right,
really just being open to kind of learn and not being defensive as an ally, you know,
right,
and knowing that you'll mess up kind of thing, you know, you'll say the wrong thing, but to kind of just start again. It's like a working relationship, you know, you're not going to get everything right, and then not continuing a cycle. I think those are
right.
like the main things, just having a conversation, not being defensive, and not continuing that cycle, to just be like, okay, stop, how can I make this better, how can I, you know, de-escalate this, how can I be a support to this cause, rather than yeah, just continuing that cycle or ignoring it and just being like, I don't see color and I don't see this happening, it's fine, and I'll just go into my own perfect corner, and I'm not that bad, so they're bad but I'm not that bad, so it's okay. And it's just like, no, that doesn't help anything. Be open, be open, talk up, and really just
There's no room for defensiveness here. I mean,
yeah,
there's no room for defensiveness in healthy relationships in general. So,
yeah,
like, unlearning defensiveness might be the first step to being a healthier human being. And once
yeah,
you figure out how to approach things without being defensive, then
yeah,
adjusting and figuring out how to just say, okay, I didn't get that right. But I noted, I'm gonna get it right the next time.
yeah,
That's growth. That's called the growth mindset, you know.
yeah,
Um, so I hope to keep having those conversations. It's really important, and it's definitely hasn't ended. And I find so much hope in the fact that, like, I read this quote about you can't reverse progress in society. So we've made so much progress. It won't be taken away from us, and we're just going to keep making progress.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope idealistically it ends up being that our children don't have to have this conversation with their friends growing up, and they don't have to have it with their children, you know. And I hopefully in the next 20 years, it won't happen instantly. It's nice that people are opening up now, but hopefully those conversations continue, that in 20 years it's a completely different world where we don't, even though we do see color, we appreciate it rather than, you know, kind of stereotype it or use it as a negative to treat people differently.
Right. We have to start treating people based on who they are and their hearts and their, you know, there's so many amazing people out there. They shouldn't be judged before they even speak, or based on a hoodie. Like that just, so.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's been nice.
It eats at my heart.
No, definitely. But yeah, it's been really nice having this conversation, and hopefully like we continue to have more.
Yeah, I would love that. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time and being open to talk to me about things that I might not quite get right. So I appreciate it.
No, definitely. And we should definitely do it again. This has
Okay.
been
We should, for sure. Thank you so much, Connie.
Thanks, Vanessa. All right, I'll catch you soon.